records the deeds of believers, the rewards of the believers. So in 1 Corinthians 3, where it talks about the trial of our works through fire, again, Paul wasn't talking about some new revelation that he was receiving. He was reiterating ancient rabbinical understanding of the Torah concerning dispensation when it happens, and teaching it to the Gentile converts. In 2 Corinthians it says, we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that each one may be recompensed for his deeds in the body. Recompense is defined as to either punish or reward appropriately for an action. Yom Hadin is the verdict, the judgment or verdict that is rendered. Yom HaZikaron reflects the recompense. The believers, the bride, is closed up at this time with the groom and is being given gifts by her groom. The wicked are facing their recompense on earth during the days of awe. Obadiah 15 says, for the day of the Lord is near upon all the heathen, speaking of unbelievers, not non-Jews, as thou hast done, it shall be done unto thee.
Yes, yes,
thy reward shall return upon thine own head. Who is right? Who?
Yes, yes.
So what you do will be returned.
Oh, yes.
It's the day of remembrance. I remember what you did. For the good, for the bad.
Yes.
That division. You getting this? You guys are getting this. Alright. The fifth thing is Yom HaChish. This has twofold collocations. It means Kishe comes from the root kashe, meaning conceal, cover, or hide. Two ways to view it is the hidden day or the day of the hiding. Let's look at the hidden day first. Remember, all days and years go from darkness to light, winter to summer. You know, the years. This is the new year. It's starting in the winter, and it's going to go to summer. The morning and the evening, and the morning were the first day, goes from darkness to light. Well, the months in the Jewish calendar are the same thing. They're based on the lunar cycle. Months begin on the new moon. In darkness, the moon cannot be seen. It is said to be hidden. Well, obviously, the new moon teaches about and provides us a picture about a believer's growth in Messiah. All months begin in darkness, and as the moon turns toward the sun, it reflects more and more of the sun's brilliance. Obviously, all believers begin in spiritual darkness, doomed to our winter of spiritual death. But as we align and yield ourselves to the Lord, our stony hearts turn more and more to reflect His brilliance, turning our death into life, our winter into summer, and our nights into day. Beautiful picture. Beautiful picture. Well, this festival, Yom Teruah, of which Yom HaChish is a reference of, occurs on the first of the month itself. That is the only one of its kind. Remember Leviticus? It occurs on the first of the month, which is the new moon. Well, God had appointed a special service for new moons. You have Rosh Hashanah, the Shabbats were for weekly Sabbaths, and then Yom Teruah was the yearly renewal. Psalm 81:3 says, sound the shofar on the new moon in concealment of our festival. Well, the better translation is that English is awful. Blow the shofar at the new moon at the time of the concealed moon is actually what it's meaning. So, this festival falls on the new moon. Well, that presents quite a significant problem. Because the rabbinical court in Jerusalem was to find out when the new moon had been sighted or not sighted, as it were. And they would have to then count the days from the new moon to whatever festival it was, and they would send the word out so everyone would know.
Yes.
Well, this was the new moon. So it was difficult to know when it would be sighted, and much less to get the notification out to those in Jerusalem, and then even more so to get it out to the surrounding areas in Israel. So they could never know for certain what the day or the hour of the new moon was. All they knew was the season, the week. Does that sound familiar? Matthew 24, no, but of that day and hour no man knoweth, no, not the angels in heaven. That first part is an idiom for the Feast of Trumpets. It was the only feast understood to be a hidden day. It was the only one on the calendar like that. Remember, he's a Jew speaking to Jews, combining the marriage and prophetic lingo together. He knew exactly what he was doing. He was delivering. Alright, the rabbis knew that the 6th month had begun, and they could approximate about 30 days when it would happen. But the day was absolutely unknown because it had to be verified seen, or not seen, as it was. So they just prepared against the day, and they were looking up, waiting for the day of the Lord. Does the Feast of Trumpets, does that ring any bells?
Oh, yes.
Okay, when these things begin to come to pass, look up, lift up your heads, for your redemption draws nigh. Therefore watch, pray that you may be kind of worthy to escape all these things that come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. Well, we know the season that we are in. We know the 6th month has begun. We know we're in the season of Teshuvah, and we're looking up, waiting for this hidden day, like a groom, like a bride anticipating her groom's immediate return. Okay, so these rabbis, their intention was, they wanted to strengthen the observance of this day because it was so difficult in these ancient times. And there was such uncertainty as to the correct calendar day that they had it be celebrated for 2 days. Remember the 10 days of all, Yom Teruah takes up 2. That's where it comes from. 1st and 2nd of Tishrei is rabbinically viewed, and I think it's fine, as one long day. Yom HaKira. The reasoning is behind, so everybody who could get on that ark of that day. If you just would, you would have that last little chance. That's just like opening the ark up. Just one more time, let that last little lizard get on. Okay? So, okay. And it still is, to this day, celebrated 2 days, even in Israel, not just in the diaspora, which is the Jews living outside of Israel. So, when the shofar was finally blown, the people, they had to be about the business. They had to be occupied until the day arrived. But they had to be doing their business, but they had to leave immediately, whatever they were doing, the field or the mills or whatever, stop, run home, and celebrate Yom Teruah. So the Lord's analogy of the day of the Lord, that 2 will be in the field or grinding at a mill, and that 1 will be taken, the other left, that was a perfect picture of Yom Teruah, of Yom HaKish. His listeners had experienced the rehearsal.
Yes, the rehearsal.
All right. 1 Thessalonians 5:2 says, but at the time of the seasons, brethren, ye have no need that I write unto you. He's speaking to people who know this. For you yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord, tabernacles, Feast of Trumpets, it comes as a thief in the night. You have to be ready. You guys know this. But we have lost, 2,000 years later, we have lost this Jewish cultural understanding. We need to regain it back. Cultural understanding is vital. All right. Well, the second part of Yom HaKish is the day of the hiding. Well, it's an easy parallel to follow that the moon is a type of the believer. That's easy logic to follow. Well, it also follows logically that it's being unseen or hidden in that day. Yom Teruah, the day of judgment, is also a perfect shadow or foretelling of the righteous being hidden on that day of Yom Teruah, this day of judgment. Remember these verses that we already looked at, Psalm 27:5, for in the time of trouble he shall hide me in his pavilion, in the secret of his tabernacle shall he hide me. Zephaniah 2, it may be that you shall be hid in the day of the Lord's anger. It was the hiding of the moon that was the signal that the day of the Lord had begun. That was what they used. So it follows then that the hiding away of the bride will be the signal of the beginning of the final day of the Lord. The 2 Thessalonians 2:1 and 3. 2 Thessalonians 2, 1 and 3. Alright. 2 Thessalonians 2, 1 and 3. Now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, and by our gathering together unto him, gather the people, the shofar, that ye be not soon shaken in mind, or be troubled, neither by spirit, nor by word, nor by letter, as from us, as that the day of Christ is at hand. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that the man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. Well, it was the hiding of the moon that was the signal for the day of the Lord here. Yeah. So what here in 2 Thessalonians, it looks like there's a falling away, like a revolt or defection that is the signal.
Listen.
Greek scholar Kenneth West contends that the Greek word apostasia, translated as falling away, is mistranslated here and should be instead translated as departure. In the Little Scott lexicon, the second meaning of this word is a departure or disappearance, coming from the root word astifeni. And 11 out of 15 times that this word is used in a whole word, it is translated as depart.
Yes.
As in departing from another person, or from another place. And so the scholar contends that in this context, it does not support the meaning of a revolt or defection, but rather the context is gathered by in the first one it says, by the gathering of ourselves unto him, that is the departure that he's speaking of in verse 3. So let no man deceive you by any means, except there come a departure, and that man of sin be revealed, then the end will come. So it fits, it parallels. The shadow is shadowing perfectly the type. The form and the shadow fit together. There is no conflict. There is no conflict. Alright. So let me insert this little nugget of information. It's believed that on Yom Teruah that Moses ascended up to Mount Sinai for the second set of tablets, and that he came back down on Yom Kippur, which could be seen as a type of the rapture. So, our next, almost finished here guys, ties into our next idiom for Yom Teruah, which is the opening of the gates. The gates of heaven are believed to be open on Yom Teruah and then closed on Yom Kippur. Yes. This is in reference to the 7-day notice that God gives all those on earth to repent. Repent now, while you still have time. Open ye the gates that the righteous nation which keepeth the truth may enter in. Open to me the gates, that I will go into them. I will praise the Lord, the gate of the Lord, into which the righteous shall enter. Opening of the gates happens right here. You better get in while you can. Alright, so the gates of heaven are open for the raptured saints. Now we know that the resurrection of the saints happens at the same time as the rapture. The resurrection of the wicked is the second resurrection. That's a different time. But the resurrection of the saints and the rapture are connected by the next name is of this day, Yom Teruah, the last trump. The last trump. This is, in Judaism, the last trump. Okay, one of the reasons for the shofar is to proclaim the resurrection of the righteous dead. Most famously referenced in 1 Corinthians 15. In a moment, a twinkling of the eye, the last trump, for the trump shall resound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. Well, in Judaism, and Jesus was a Jew, there were 3 named trumps, or shofarim, and in order, they were on Feast of Pentecost, weeks, Shavuot, whichever quote you wrote, is the first trump. It is the betrothal. This last trump in Judaism is blown on Yom Teruah, the last trump. This is where the bridegroom cometh. And then the third trump is called the great trump. It is blown on Yom Kippur. It heralds the Messiah's return to earth and the ingathering of the elect.
Yes, yes.
All right. So there's 3 trumps, 2 days of the Feast of Tabernacles where the trumpets are blown. Yet it's one day. When you're dissecting prophecy, that can make things more complicated. Isaiah 26, 19 and 21. Let's go there. Isaiah 26, 19 and 21. So, the last trump was a specific, in 1 Corinthians, he's a Jew.
Yes.
He's a Jew, first century Jew. He's talking about a technical reference to the feast structure. All right. Okay, Isaiah 26, 19 and 20. This is beautiful. The resurrection. Thy dead men shall live, together with my dead body shall they arise. Ooh, Passover. Hallelujah. The resurrection. With my dead body shall they arise.
Yes.
Awake and sing, ye that dwell in the dust, for thy dew is as the dew of herbs, and the earth shall cast out their dead. Come, my people, enter thou into thy chambers, our wedding chamber with the King. And shut the doors about thee, and hide thyself.
Hallelujah.
Hide ourselves in his pavilion with our groom, as it were just for a little moment, until the indignation be overpast.
Yes.
For, now here's the recompense of the other group. For behold, the Lord cometh out of his place to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their iniquity. The earth shall also disclose her blood, and shall no more cover her slain. That just about sums it up pretty good.
Yes. Hallelujah.
All right, now for the last 2. Yom Teruah itself. Yom means day. Teruah means awakening blast or alarm shout. They're similar. He translated any of those words are sufficient in English. The day of the awakening blast, the day of the sounding of the shofar, the feast or festival of trumpets. Yom Teruah is the name used in the Hebrew in the Bible, so this is its biblical name, Yom Teruah. The blowing of the shofar would take place at the temple, and the commandment of the mitzvah is to hear the shofar. Remember, it's the day of blowing of the trumpets? Not necessarily that we blow it ourselves. Now remember, in Hebrew is Shema, hear. In Hebrew, you don't separate the oral perception from the physical response of heeding the message. We're supposed to hear that alarm blast. We're supposed to heed it by our actions. Well, in the Bible, there are 2 types of trumpets used. There are the silver trumpets, silver being the symbol of the price of the redemption of the soul. This was what was used in the atonement money for the children of Israel. The trumpets were probably made from that atonement money, from the numbering of the firstborn. And the 2 silver, there were 2 of them. The number of testimony and witness, where all things are established. A beautiful picture of the Jew and Gentile, one in Messiah, united in Christ. Now, the shofar, which is the one that is blown which is the one that is designated to be blown on Yom Teruah, this is the horn that was specified. It is a symbol of the substitute sacrifice of the ram in Isaac's place. Okay, and there was only one shofar in their deal because there was only one sacrifice. Okay, so there are 4 calls for the shofar that are given out. The tikiyah, which means the blast. T-E-K-I-A. The shevarim, S-H-E-V-A-R-I-M, which is the broken notes. The Teruah, which means alarm. This is the specific blast, alarm. Awake! Awake! And the Tikiyah Geduel, the great blast. So, it was very important, if you were a Jew, to learn and understand all the distinctive calls and messages of the trumpets, so you could respond properly.
Yes.
And these days, we have to hear the voice of the Lord. We have to know what He's saying. And as the days get more evil, that gets more and more necessary.
Yes, you have to know it.
All right. And it was the priests, the leaderships, who were responsible to sound the trumpet on these special occasions. Remember Ezekiel 33, the watchman on the wall that's read? Well, the Jewish understanding that the sword that's coming on the land that speaks of is the judgment of the day of the Lord. That is indeed what that was speaking of specifically. In Amos 3:6, it says, "Shall the trumpet be blown in the city, and that people not be afraid?" Well, this parable of the watchman is serving as a trumpet blast to the city of the people who blow the trumpets. All right, you better blow the trumpet. Not only do you have to hear it, but if you're the one responsible for blowing it, you better be out there blowing it.
Amen.
All right. So the trumpets were blown on the new moon and the Sabbath, but Yom Teruah was the moed, Jehovah's appointment for the blowing of the shofar. It was the threshold that begins the day of the Lord. It is the beginning of the dispensational millennial Sabbath. 6,000 years begins the 7,000 year, which is the millennial Sabbath, the Messianic kingdom. Which brings us to the last one, Hamelech, which means our 10th and final reference idiom for the day of Yom Teruah. Hamelech, H-A-M-E-L-E-C-H. Literal translation is the king. Subtitled, the day of the coronation of the Messiah. The other event that takes place during the 7 years while we're up there, along with the wedding, is the coronation of the Messiah, the King of Kings. And there's just no way I'm going to be able to cover this at this time in detail, but we will study a little bit more later on. I want to at least mention it because it is a title of this day. I read a quote that I like from a rabbi on the topic of the link between the season of Teshuvah and the actual coronation element of Yom Teruah. It says, "Warnings are the way of kings. They forewarn through decrees. So whoever transgresses will have no complaint."
Amen.
Ooh. Okay. All right, Genesis 49:10. Genesis 49:10 speaks of, the lion, the scepter will not depart from the tribe of Judah. He's coming, the lawgiver coming. And then the last part of that says, "Unto him shall the gathering of the people be." Well, what gathered the people? The sound of the shofar. And then in the Mosaic times, what would they gather? The princes, the nobles of the tribes. So the call of the shofar, that's what they would do. So once we are gathered unto him, are gathered unto our king, by the shofar blast. What are we? It's from Revelation 20. It's the last verse. Revelation 20:6. All right. Is there a parallel between the calling of the nobles of the tribes of Israel and the gathering together at the rapture? "Blessed and holy is he that hath part in the first resurrection, which takes place at the same time as the rapture, in the first resurrection. On such the second hath no power, but they shall be priests of God and of Christ, and shall reign with him 1,000 years. Just as Moses called together the nobles and the rulers and the princes of the tribes of Israel together by the blowing of the shofar, so God, the King of Kings, is calling together his elect for his coronation."
Amen. Yes, he is. Hallelujah.
All right, that's good.
Hallelujah.
So these are major elements, at least, of Yom Teruah. But let's watch this. We're going to be continuing a study on Yom Kippur, and then after that, Sukkot. But if we do that right here, and with that in mind, that's having us believe that the Messiah's millennial reign and the millennial Shabbat, Sabbath, actually begins with the tribulation. 7 years of tribulation. Well, that doesn't sound like it makes a lot of sense. Well, but it actually really does, because every Sabbath always began with a cleansing of the altar.
Yes. Yes, it does. Yes, it
So,
does. Cleansing.
a cleansing
Yes,
of the altar.
Yes, it does.
So, to be continued.
Amen. Amen.